and Chief Executive Officer for the Nuclear Energy Institute. Maria Korsnick.
Well, hello and welcome to the Nuclear Energy Policy Forum. I want to start by thanking our sponsors, Constellation, PSEG, and GE Vernova Hitachi. Big round of applause for them. We're gathered here at an unprecedented time in our industry's history. For 2 decades, electricity demand has remained fairly stagnant. But now, I think we can all agree that things are getting pretty interesting. American manufacturing, American innovation, artificial intelligence, all demand more power. The massive data centers that we need to win the race for AI require 28 gigawatts of new electricity by the end of next year. And that's why in December, experts increased the 5-year load growth forecast by almost 500%. And that's why over the next 10 years, experts also say that half of the country is at an increased risk of power outages. Growth in our sector has gone from incremental to incredible. And it all raises the question, how are we going to meet this demand? How will we meet the demand when we need enough electricity to power 20 cities the size of New York City? It seems almost impossible, doesn't it? Almost. But history has taught us where there's a will, there's a way. We know we can generate 60 Hoover Dams worth of new electricity because that's what we do here in America. It seemed impossible when President Hoover declared that he wanted to build the largest public works project in our nation's history. And it seemed impossible when workers began laying down 44,000 tons of steel, installing 582 miles of pipe, and pouring 6 million tons of concrete. But the whole of government came together with the innovation of the private sector. The will found the way. The impossible became possible, and our nation was forever changed. We are the visionaries of our time, and I'm proud to say that the nuclear industry has a future of unlimited potential, but we're facing some headwinds, and the actions that we take today will define what the future looks like. Here in Washington, we're very grateful for nuclear's continued bipartisan support. This is proven by the fact that Secretary of Energy Chris Wright is going to be joining us today, and we're really heartened by that. You know, on just his 3rd day in office, he signed an order to, and I quote, unleash commercial nuclear power. We're encouraged by this administration's recognition of the value of nuclear. Secure, resilient, affordable, abundant, and increasingly clean energy system. As the administration works to unleash commercial nuclear power, NEI has had very productive meetings with Secretary Wright, Interior Secretary Burgum, to provide, recommendations that preserve existing nuclear generation, usher in the deployment and export of next generation of nuclear, and secure a reliable domestic fuel supply, and promote efficiency at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Our industry is ready not only to meet demand, but to break new ground and push the limits and redefine what's possible. This is thanks to all of you. The hard-working work that you're doing to tackle one of the hardest challenges facing the world today. From here on stage, I can see a few of our great supporters. Don Moule of the Tennessee Valley Authority, another utility that began as a massive public project. Nearly 100 years later, in fact, just this morning, TVA submitted a construction permit application for the GE Vernova Hitachi BWRX 300 design. And it also applied for an $800 million DOE grant, along with a coalition of partners that includes Bechtel, Duke Energy, and GE Hitachi. Also, Bob Blue is with us today. He's the chair and president and CEO of Dominion Energy and also chair of NEI's board. Last year, Dominion secured a 20-year extension for its North Anna plant, and Dominion has also partnered with Amazon to explore SMR technology. And Drew Marsh will be here later today. Drew is chair and CEO of Entergy and vice chair of NEI's board. Entergy is investigating new technologies to meet booming industrial demand and increasing their nuclear output. And they also secured a site permit for a potential new reactor in Mississippi. Also, you'll see Joe Dominguez, the president and CEO of Constellation Energy. Constellation drew some of the biggest headlines for nuclear last year when they announced the restart of the 3 Mile Island Unit 1 as the Crane Clean Energy Center, and Microsoft is their partner. All of these examples demonstrate how big tech and big industry are betting big on nuclear. You know, that wasn't always the case. It was just a few years ago that I found myself in a meeting with companies from Silicon Valley. And they told me they would not go with nuclear power. Now, fast forward to today. We're in a whole new reality. Google, Meta, Amazon, they've all joined 14 of the world's biggest banks and financial institutions to pledge to triple global nuclear power by 2050. Google has also signed a deal with Kairos Power to purchase 500 megawatts of electricity. And Amazon has led a $500 million investment in X Energy and has announced the intent to buy 5 gigawatts of nuclear power. Meta put out an RFP for 4 gigawatts of nuclear power. And just this month, Elemental Power signed an agreement with Google to develop 3 project sites for advanced reactors. And Amazon Data Services has also become NEI's first official member from the Magnificent Seven. New nuclear partnerships with tech customers total 30 gigawatts of commitments across the United States, and the numbers keep growing. But it isn't just Silicon Valley that's turning to nuclear. Wall Street's doing the same. NEI hosts an annual financing summit, and this year, we had twice the number of participants as in the first summit, which was just 3 years ago. When the conference started, there were really limited vehicles to invest in nuclear, but in 2024, the private sector transaction value in nuclear was more than the prior 4 years combined. Corporations aren't running away from nuclear, they're running to us, and our arms are wide open. The private sector's growing investment in our industry is matched by the public sector's support for nuclear. Last year, Congress provided almost $3 billion to support a domestic fuel supply to eliminate our reliance on Russia, and another $1 billion for next-generation reactor demonstrations. Congress also passed the ADVANCE Act, and 88 senators from both parties voted for it. We have proven that nuclear can unite policymakers from across the aisle, but we aren't taking anything for granted, especially not now. our industry is hyper-focused on protecting federal policies and programs that preserve and expand nuclear generation. And I'm talking about programs like the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program, like the Loan Program Office, like the nuclear tax credits. Just recently, NEI joined more than 120 of our member companies to send a letter to congressional leadership urging them to retain the credits. Let's just think about what was life like before those tax credits? Well, we were prematurely shutting down nuclear plants. But after those tax credits were passed, what did we start to see? Power uprates, plant restarts, and decades-long reactor extensions. All of that progress, the technological boom it's fueling, the financial boom that it's fostering, all of that could slow down or turn around completely if Congress fails to preserve the nuclear credits. We've seen the current language in the current legislation from the House, and it phases out some much-needed support. But we're not giving up, and we will be out there pounding the pavement every step of the way, because here's the bottom line. Nuclear tax credits support good jobs, thriving communities, and national security. Today, members of Congress have a choice: to shape the future or stand in its way. Let me be clear. Nuclear tax credits are absolutely essential to move our nation forward. To move forward, we also need modernization at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And we're encouraged by the progress that we're seeing. The ADVANCE Act directed the NRC to prioritize efficiency alongside safety, and they revised their mission statement to acknowledge that, and we're seeing some of that take hold. This year, the agency began approving subsequent license renewals for the first time since 2021. So one example of that progress is Xcel Energy's Monticello plant. It was expected to take 24,000 review hours, but it actually only ended up taking 16,000. So it decreased the review time by 1/3. That's the kind of efficiency that we need to become the rule rather than the exception. At the state level, we're also seeing leaders take action, and we have seen leaders are moving from a restriction to really an expansion of nuclear. Some examples of that. Last year, 25 states took pro-nuclear action, and 7 state public utility commissions approved orders to take action in support of nuclear. And this year, 11 governors mentioned nuclear in their State of the State addresses, and their words have been matched with action. Let's talk about just a few. In Tennessee, Kairos Power is building the first of 2 new demonstration reactors, and the concrete is drying as we speak. In Wyoming, TerraPower is building the state's first commercial reactor. In Colorado, a bill was passed to declare nuclear as clean energy. And in Texas, they're developing a nuclear energy fund, which could become the largest investment in nuclear from any state. And in Idaho, the Department of Defense is building one of the country's first microreactors. You know, just last year, I visited Idaho National Lab, and I got to see the DOME facility. And that facility is where they pioneered fast reactor technology. It's amazing. Now, INL has repurposed that same facility, and they're going to use it to test microreactors, which will become another breakthrough innovation. In fact, Westinghouse and Radiant Industries have both secured an award to test their microreactor designs in that facility. You know, success at home is being reflected by expansion abroad. Internationally, nuclear has gone from the fringes of the energy conversation to the center. Our nation's competitors are trying to seize their own momentum on nuclear. Russia is building 10 reactors across the globe, and China has 30 reactors under construction within its own borders. In response, other countries are trying to achieve energy independence through nuclear. In Canada, just this month, Ontario Power Generation cleared the last hurdle before construction begins on the GE Vernova SMR at the Darlington site. This is a huge win for the North American nuclear industry and the clean energy future that we're building together. In Japan, the latest national energy plan calls for 20% of its electricity needs come from nuclear by 2040. And in Germany, boy, news this week, a majority of people now support restarting the country's nuclear program, and just read in the Financial Times that Germany has agreed to no longer block efforts to ensure that nuclear power is treated the same as renewable energy in EU legislation. A big change. In the United Kingdom, the government has approved 8 sites for future nuclear development, and the Prime Minister has asked for even more expansion. In fact, the UK ambassador, Peter Mandelson, he's going to be joining us a little bit later today, and we thank him for joining us and for helping us build transatlantic ties for nuclear. Other countries are walking back their own restrictions. In fact, 35 years ago, Italy closed its last nuclear plant. But in February, the nation passed a law to begin transitioning back to nuclear. And countries that were already pro-nuclear are redoubling their efforts. Bulgaria, Romania, and India are all moving forward with new nuclear plants. The US has the chance to help countries establish their own programs. One great example is Poland, and it's partnering with Westinghouse and Bechtel to build its very first reactor. And I recently visited alongside Secretary Wright to keep strengthening that relationship. NEI has been a part of conversations like these across the world. Over the past 12 months, I've led trade missions to Sweden, to Finland, to the United Kingdom, to the Netherlands, and I've led an executive delegation to Poland, and I've represented the US industry at events hosted by the International Atomic Energy Agency and the OECD. Everywhere I've gone, it's been clear. We're front of mind for so many leaders and policymakers and entrepreneurs. Our allies and our adversaries are competing to become global leaders in nuclear. If our leaders on Capitol Hill do not protect existing policies and programs, America will fall behind. 61% of Americans now support nuclear energy. That's the highest level it's been in 15 years. When it comes to energy needs, nuclear has gone from being an afterthought to being the first call. Our industry is responding to this unprecedented interest by taking unprecedented action. In fact, this year we're celebrating the 1-year anniversary of Project Vogel's completion. And it has proven that advanced nuclear is possible. And just look at what else is accomplished just since the last time we gathered. 2 plant restart applications, 2 initial license renewals to 40 years, and 6 subsequent license renewals to 80 years have been granted. And more than 25 new projects are in the pipeline. And there's more to come. Our members are planning to submit at least 8 construction permit applications for new reactors, 4 operating license applications for new reactors, and that's going to enable construction to begin at 5 sites, Operations to begin in the next 2 years for 2 microreactors, and plant restarts are also on the horizon, like Holtec's Palisades plant, and NextEra is also exploring the viability of resuming operations at the Duane Arnold plant in Iowa. Still, we have to face the hard truth. Even if all of that happens and goes according to plan, it won't be enough to meet the rising energy needs. We cannot afford to go backwards. Federal policies and programs not only incentivize new nuclear generation, but they also protect the clean, reliable power that our current fleet provides the grid today. Right now, our industry, it's like an engine that's being primed for higher demand. We're trying to keep up, but inside the engine, some of the gears just aren't kind of moving at the right speed. My point is this: we need every stakeholder in this industry to work together. And doing that is going to take 3 simple but very significant steps. And the first is coordination. We have to get everyone on the same page and in the same room, so to speak, so that we can start making progress towards the same goal. Now, one such initiative, it's already started, and it offers a lot of promise. The president established the National Energy Dominance Council, which brings together public officials and private stakeholders to work on everything from opening closed nuclear plants to building new reactors. And that brings me to the second step, which is optimization. When change is happening this fast, there's really no long term. There's a short term and then a shorter term, and then the shortest term priority for our industry has to be optimizing the systems that we have right now. This is kind of an all hands on deck kind of moment for the energy industry. But at the end of the day, nuclear is critical to go the distance. Now, to keep it that way, we have to watch out for the regulatory drag that could slow down every gear in the system. And as I've already mentioned, I think the NRC has made some progress here. And Chairman Wright realizes that the agency still has a ways to go. And that's why last year, NEI submitted a roadmap to the NRC. We took a 5-year review process for microreactors and streamlined it to 6 months. And this year, we're doubling down on that same effort, and we're going to continue to call for a host of reforms to help streamline the process. Once we've eliminated as much drag as possible, then we can all start reaching the same speed, a faster speed. Because that's the third and final step, acceleration. We have to accelerate nuclear deployment. And that requires our supply chain today to meet up with the needs of tomorrow. In the coming years, we're going to see new construction across the energy sector, and many forms of power, they require similar parts, like turbines. But manufacturing might not be able to keep up with the demand, even at full speed. Already, some companies are in a years-long wait for a new gas-fired turbine. Our industry has to get ahead of these supply chain bottlenecks. That same goes for establishing a reliable fuel supply. Our industry is working hard on that. Centrus, Urenco, Orano, Global Laser Enrichment, General Matter, and LIS Technologies are all making moves to reshore our fuel supply. There's much more to accomplish, and we can't do it all by ourselves. It's going to take some federal support to drive further investment. And that's why we need to expand nuclear and STEM education in schools, universities, and apprenticeships nationwide, because we need an increased nuclear workforce. Above all, there's one thing that our industry needs, and that to meet this moment, and that's investment. And I'm talking about the federal government providing a financial backstop for early mover projects and the leadership that was shown by the introduction of the ARC Act. I'm talking about bolstering the loan authorities that are fostering private investment in nuclear. And yes, I'm talking again about tax credits. They are saving billions of dollars in US households. And because they are being debated right now, right here in DC, the future of our industry is in the hands of Congress and this administration. So is the future of American energy security. Whoever leads in AI, they're going to lead the world. It's a national imperative to ensure that the rate of AI innovation is not constrained by the rate of new energy output. And the only way to future-proof our grid, the only form of energy that's clean and reliable, is nuclear. Nuclear is the smart, strategic answer. So let's coordinate, let's optimize, let's accelerate nuclear deployment so that the United States can become the undisputed global leader in nuclear energy. Imagine the prosperity that we could unlock if we did unleash commercial nuclear power. Gosh, imagine the hundreds of thousands of jobs that we're going to create, the millions of homes that we can power, the untold innovation that we can fuel. Imagine how this excellence at home can lead to hundreds of billions of dollars in exports abroad. And imagine how much safer the world will be if the United States established international dominance, not just in energy, but also in the technology that will determine the future of geopolitics. We can accomplish all of this. We can change history, just like the visionaries behind the largest concrete structure since the Pantheon, the Hoover Dam. At the dedication of that project, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt praised it by saying, "This is an engineering victory of the first order, another great achievement for American resourcefulness, American skill, and determination." Together, we can make sure the same is said about nuclear power. Together, we can make the impossible possible, because nuclear makes it happen. Thank you. And now I'm going to be joined on stage by NEI's Mary Carpenter, and she's going to facilitate some Q&A from those of you that are joining us here in the room. We also have some folks that are joining us virtually. Trying to get your way over here, Mary.
Hi, Maria. Thank you for that speech.
Good to see you.
It really is such a critical moment for the industry.
It absolutely is. And it's a critical time right here in DC.
Yeah, it is. It's very exciting. So now we'll be taking some audience questions. If anyone has a question for Maria, please follow the instructions on the screen. All right, let's jump in. The first one, you hit on this a few times in the speech. Why are nuclear tax credits so important?
Well, they're so important because the nuclear tax credits are really being built into the business plans that people are pulling together when they're talking about either uprating a plant, building a new plant. And so it's very important that we send the signals that we have long-term stability in what your project plan looks like for nuclear. And these tax credits are incredibly helpful. As I mentioned in the speech, it really helps enable giving money back to the ratepayers as part of the tax credit program. And so it's really giving the stability to nuclear to have that long-term investment horizon, whether you're restarting a plant or whether you're starting a plant from scratch.
You mentioned your recent trip to Poland. Tell us more about that and why Poland is interested in nuclear.
Yeah, so Poland, it's an exciting place because they haven't had nuclear. So this is an example of a country that wants to go nuclear. And actually, historically, they have had a lot of coal. So it's a bit of a coal to nuclear story in Poland. And they actually are looking at lots of things. I mentioned the large reactor that they're interested in building with Westinghouse and Bechtel, but they're also interested in SMR technology. They're working with GE Vernova on the SMR technology. And it's also an opportunity for our regulator to work with a country that has a developing regulator. And so there's a lot of firsts in this adventure. And it's great to see Poland as excited as they are to move forward.
A fun follow-up, any other exciting recent trips to share or places you're heading next?
Well, actually, I've done some travel within the United States. We've been talking a little bit about outside of the United States. I was recently at the Holtec plant in Palisades plant in Michigan and really got a firsthand view of a lot of the work that they're doing there to bring that plant back online. And also was out in California and visited Kairos Power. Also very exciting. And it's exciting to be in California talking to the CEO of the company, and on his wall is a big screen TV of the construction in Tennessee. So he is watching the moment by moment construction of those test reactors right from his desk, and very, very exciting. They were pouring concrete the day that I was there.
That's awesome. Just a reminder, if you have a question, please insert it into Slido. You mentioned big tech agreements in your speech. What is driving that interest?
A lot of it's AI. I mean, we had interest in big tech before there was a large AI push, but I think the AI conversation has really taken it to a new level. You know, as I mentioned in my speech, this is moving fast, and it's from a national security perspective, it matters who wins that race. And it's very important for the United States and the companies here in the United States. And it's a hungry technology for power. It needs a lot of power. I would tell you, to begin with, we'll probably be using the spinning reserve, if you will, the plants that are available to us but not running at full power. We'll also be, you know, employing gas plants and others because there's a very large thirst for immediate power. But absolutely, there's a place for nuclear in this. And as I mentioned in my speech, nuclear is the strategic longer-term play for that base load carbon-free energy.
Is there an appetite on the Hill for a nuclear financial backstop bill, given the move to sunset tax credits?
So it's hard, right? It's hard to get money really for anything. You can see the tough conversations that they're having on the Hill. But yes, I do believe that there will be an appetite for not long-term, but when you just are getting projects started. So it's that first of a kind or early of a kind, where you're trying to get that technology kind of up and started. What that allows us to do is let the financial markets see, well, how complicated is it to build that? How long will it really take to build that? There's a lot of money that's gonna be ready to come in as soon as they get a view for what that's gonna take. So it's the first of a kind, early of a kind investment that we're gonna need some support with.
Kind of a follow-up to that, what is NEI doing to shape legislation and potential executive orders? You mentioned responding to the House bill, but what steps are happening to be proactive?
Yeah, well, obviously we're pounding the pavement every day, and so we're always, you know, up on the Hill talking to folks, as many of our member companies are doing as well. It's just very, very important that people appreciate. Again, nuclear's the long-term play, and when you don't make the right decisions today, it was just a few years ago we were shutting plants down. We shouldn't forget that. We shouldn't forget the pain and the challenge that is for local communities, for the employees that are working at those plants. And so the support that nuclear gets is really a strategic signal that says, hey, this is a good thing. We want this for the United States. And as I mentioned before, to step back, you know, we're not going to be effective outside of the United States if we're not building right here at home. right? China and Russia, they've already decided what they want to do. They're out there building. They've demonstrated that. We have a lot of countries that would love to do business with the United States on commercial nuclear power. We have to show and demonstrate that we're in it for the long term, that we're building it here, and that we're going to build it for you, and that we're in it for the long term to help you on the supply chain. It's very important.
You mentioned the folks working at the plants. How is NEI planning to tackle the issue of staffing new nuclear? As there is already issues of staffing current reactors with everyone from tradesmen to engineers.
That's correct. And so we have been working on on nuclear workforce development. You know, when you say nuclear, it makes it sound like you need a bunch of nuclear engineers, and that's really not the case. Sure, we need a few, but you really need the whole supply chain, the whole value chain, if you will, of human talent. So the mechanics, the electricians, the INC techs, as well as 2-year degree, as well as 4-year degree folks. And so we really need to get that whole workforce up and running. As part of that, NEI has kicked off the workforce plan that we have and the Nuclear Works website. I'd encourage everyone to go take a look at that. It's an opportunity for people to go and see what are the jobs in nuclear, and based on my background, where would I fit in terms of maybe some of the jobs that are offered in nuclear. So that's just one step, if you will, in trying to bring new to nuclear folks in. In an interesting way, I think the data center conversation also helps nuclear, because the data centers are being built right now. And data centers take, I don't know, 6 to 9 months maybe to build, so they go up pretty quick. Well, they need a lot of the similar talent that we're going to need, right? You need electricians and you need welders. And so actually the trades folks are being increased, and the apprenticeship programs are being increased right now to support the data center build out. But when all of you are ready to start building nuclear plants, honestly, that talent is going to gravitate to nuclear because the jobs last longer and they have more certainty over a longer period of time.
We have time for one more question, and this is a good one because Congress is very popular in the questions right now. So are there other options for Congress beyond tax credits that can aid with nuclear expansion?
Well, yes. I mentioned the ARC Act. We would like to see the ARC Act reintroduced in this Congress. And actually, I think maybe just today, they are talking about introducing a bill that would support international development for nuclear. And so both of those are areas that will help add and increase the draw for nuclear to help people appreciate and understand how important it is for the U.S. to be the leader in commercial nuclear.
Great, perfect thing to end on. Thank you everyone for the questions, and thank you, Maria.
Thanks.